Hello, good afternoon. This is Pastor Ojimba Alex, and today I'm going to record a message which is called King Solomon's Church. Now, a lot of people in the Bible don't understand that there was a reason why God nominated King Solomon to build him a church. I've made a video about King Solomon and the church previously, but this time around I want to show you what gave King Solomon, the church, and how he got it. I want you to understand that King Solomon, the church never came to him easily. The church was something that King Solomon took time out, and he was praying to God for God to give him a church. The Bible tells us how God told him to put all the things together, like the equipments and the tools to build a church. But the Bible doesn't tell us exactly what King Solomon had to go through to have that connection with God. The Bible doesn't tell us what King Solomon had to go through over the years, or why God handed him the church particularly and nobody else. I want you to understand that it took a long while for God to release the church to King Solomon. The church was released to King Solomon in the spirit first, before it became a reality in the physical life. King Solomon, he searched and he toiled. He hustled. He tried everything to have that church because he knew that something was missing. And whilst King Solomon was looking around and hustling and bustling, the Lord was patiently watching him. Now, I want you to understand that one of the reasons why God gave King Solomon that church was for King Solomon to save himself as an individual. Because despite all the wealth and the wisdom King Solomon had, he was still a human being that was going astray, and God knew exactly what he had embedded in King Solomon. So God gave King Solomon this church to save himself, to save his soul, and also to save the children of Israel. Because at that point, God had looked at Israel and nothing good was coming out of Israel. There was no hope in Israel. And God contacted King Solomon and said to him, I will hand you over this church. God contacted King Solomon privately. God contacted King Solomon in a secret place. Israel was all over the place at this point, at this particular point. Israel was fading away, and God knew this. Israel was gradually becoming a desolate place, a desert, with no institutions, with no organization, with no funds. It was drying up. This is like watching someone you love fading away in front of you through illness or through sicknesses. That's exactly what was happening to Israel. And God called King Solomon specifically and said to him, King Solomon, I'll give you this church not only for yourself, but I'll give you this church for you and your people. King Solomon began to create employment in Israel. with the wisdom God gave King Solomon, God expected, or God required King Solomon to create employment opportunities for the original Hebrews, the indigenes of Israel. There was so much poverty in Israel at this point. At this point, the people that owned the land couldn't even get no food to eat. They were literal beggars. Nothing to eat. They didn't have no businesses. They didn't have no schools. They didn't have no entertainment. Israel was literally on its knees at this point. And God looked at Israel. And God said, no. I will nominate King Solomon, because he's the only one that can build me this church in Israel at this particular point, when Israel needs a spiritual institution the most. And God said to him in private, King Solomon, build me this epic church. Build me this modernized church. But never forget to employ the people. God said to King Solomon, the reason why I'm giving you this church is for you to employ the people. The people are literally becoming slaves. They're walking around begging for food. They're walking around begging for clothes. They're walking around begging for money. They don't have anything. God told King Solomon, build this church and create employment for the people. Eradicate this poverty. Restrict this poverty. And then, as King Solomon was building the church, as King Solomon finished building the church, he began to gather the people of Israel together. He began to advertise his church. He began to present his church. He began to announce in Israel that a new place, a beautiful place, a mega place, a magnificent building with magnificent facilities has been built in Israel. Suddenly there was hope in Israel. But let's not forget that this was God's vision. God could have given that, God couldn't have given, so excuse my language, God couldn't have given that church to anybody else at that particular time. God weighed the wisdom of every single individual in Israel at that time, and no one came close to Solomon. Solomon, not only was he the wisest man in Israel at the time, he was the wisest man in the world. And God said, Solomon, my son, I hand this church over to you. The children of Israel at this particular time, they were getting the wrong kind of information. They used to listen to the news, and the news used to fabricate all kinds of nonsense that was misleading. And God said to Solomon, with your wisdom, you preach in the church. You teach the children of Israel in your church. I will speak through you. And God said to King Solomon, as you're preaching in the church, the children of Israel would hear his almighty voice through King Solomon. The children of Israel needed a transformation at this point. God gave Solomon, King Solomon, the church to take away the frustrations out of Israel. Israel